So,
is it whenever I'm ready?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So thanks everyone for having us. I really appreciate it. I'll just kind of going to introduce myself here so you guys get to know me more. So my name is Kyle Larson. I'm a junior here studying labor and employment relations and minoring in communication arts and sciences. Before I came to Penn State, I actually joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. I served 4 years in the Marine Corps. I was an infantryman by trade. I was attached to 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. I did 2 deployments with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. I was a Marine Corps instructor of water survival, and after I got out, I decided to come here to Penn State. Originally, I wanted to kind of do business management. Wasn't really sure what I was going to do. Eventually switched into the major that I'm in now and kind of found my path. And so really it was kind of a tough transition for me getting to actually remember how to learn. Being in the military is kind of tough to work that transition back into civilian life. But then eventually I found the Penn State Veterans Organization. And they really helped me to kind of focus into my path and figure out what I wanted to do. They told me like what classes I need to be taking, the kind of scheduling issues I might have, how to work my GI Bill, get VA healthcare and stuff like that. So eventually I kind of wanted to give back to the Veterans Organization and help other veterans. So now I'm the president of the Penn State University Veterans Organization, as well as I'm also a student veteran mentor. So I work with the Department of Veterans Affairs and I mentor new student veterans that come to Penn State, and they essentially get assigned a mentor or a sponsor. And we just tell them, you know, here's how to use your GI Bill. Here's the VA healthcare that you could be interested in or you could apply for. And, you know, this is like a good place to eat. Here's a good place to get coffee around State College, and just really do some peer-to-peer counseling and help them get their transition into State College and into the community. And so, you know, I found out through UPUA about UPUA like my freshman year and didn't really get involved too much with it. I was still kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do at Penn State here. And after I started being the president of the Veterans Organization, I kind of realized I wanted to give back to more people, not just veterans. And so Aaron and I, running for vice president and president respectively, we came up with 72 initiatives that we feel will really help give back to the Penn State community. And specifically, we have a main focus on empowering state's future. And we have 3 pillars, those pillars being strength and unity, opening the gates for success, and for the future. And that's kind of a little bit more about myself and Aaron and our platform. With that, that's the end of my intro.
Do I go next? All right. Well, hi, my name is Lexy Pathickal. I'm a junior. I study political science with minors in economics and Spanish. First of all, I want to thank all of you guys for being here and being able to like speak about this, but also for everyone who may watch this in the future. I definitely wish this could have been like an in-person debate, but unfortunately with the circumstances that we're in, I'm still happy to do this. I want to begin by saying I'm grateful that I'm able to speak about me and Zach here in our campaign. And I believe the UPUA can and must do better to serve you, and how sorry I am that, again, we aren't able to do this in person. Personally, I know I felt pretty alone during the last few weeks, but I know I'm not alone in that. The situation we're in right now is one simply cannot be overlooked, not by you, not by the administration, and certainly not by this campaign. From the very beginning, Zach and I knew that if we as student body president and vice president of UPUA were ever going to really change the culture of our organization and the culture largely on campus, we need to change how things are run leading up to our terms. Whether it be the way we announced our candidacy, the way our platform is structured, the way we respond to the crises before us, and the way in which we engage in students, we have focused on the genuine virtues, especially of compassion, of honesty, of collaboration, and of purpose, which I know we both always held dear to our hearts, even before this campaign. Zach and I bring a new perspective to the UPUA and how it can serve students. Instead of offering a list, we're bringing a living and breathing platform to you guys, to speaking to students actively and bringing updates based off of the different student voices that we've heard. Zach and I recognize the important role the executives have in shaping the organization, which around increased transparency, inclusion, and collaboration, things which only Zach and I have consistently proven we have done as best as we can as representatives in the org. And I wish in which we can do fully as president and vice president too. The UPUA has the potential for a much brighter future with Zach and I in leading the way, a brighter future for student representation, for genuine connection with the student body, and for initiatives which are not only, they're possible to achieve, but which we will leave a truly meaningful impact on the success of our students. And I have to say, I'm really excited to get started.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Yep, thank you both. And we're just going to jump into our first question. So the first question, this is to both of you, but Kyle, if you could respond first. What do you feel is the role of UPUA here at University Park?
Yeah, so UPUA, I think it's to represent the student body, and that's the most important thing. It's to be a voice for the student body and to get things done for the students. I think it can easily get distracted into a political race, and it can be, it can turn into this political entity, and really that's not what it is. I think UPUA is just a way that students can be heard, and a way that students can come with their issues and their problems and come to us and then have us fix those issues and those problems. That's really the simplest way I can answer that question.
Yeah, so obviously UPUA is the student government on campus, but it's also a student advocacy organization. And with advocacy, it's who are we advocating for? The students. Those are our constituents. Those are who we work for. And ultimately, it's understanding the student body needs and being cognizant of the current needs to implement change that benefits students overall. Obviously, whether that be the crisis that we're in right now with the coronavirus pandemic, and actively listening to students, first and foremost, I think the biggest job of being in UPUA is being a listener, because a lot of our work isn't possible when you don't listen to those issues and struggles in the first place. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is we have to be listeners first before we even talk as student leaders.
Thank you both. Okay, so the next question is for Lexy first, then Kyle. In your own words, describe the position of vice president and how you feel you could successfully fulfill the obligations of this role. Yeah,
so with the role of vice president, the largest, I feel like, task that they have, or a part of their role, is chairing the assembly meetings. I've been in the organization for 2 years. I've been on the executive branch, actually serving as director of outreach. And then in the assembly, I was elected as at-large representative, and then was also appointed as chair of outreach, which was a privilege to serve, as we just had our last meeting last night. I believe I have the expertise to be able to lead these meetings. Parliamentary procedure, especially Robert's rules and the transition into modern rules that we just had this past year, it's definitely complicated. And serving and being in those conversations, being in that room, and also going through that procedure and system actively as a rep, I think I have a benefit and an advantage of also then chairing the meetings if I am elected as vice president. I definitely think that it's important that you have expertise of this certain area in the organization, because again, with the discourse and the disagreements that may come up in assembly, especially during legislation, you need to be able to be unbiased and also be able to maintain order in that room. And modern rules of order, the system which we use, is what does that. I actually sat on the parliamentary procedure ad hoc this past year. So I was in the full transition from going from Robert's rules into modern rules, and making it more efficient, like incorporating general consensus instead of like doing roll call for everything. I think things like that make it more efficient. And again, I think it's super important that you have experience in UPUA specifically, just because yes, you can be a leader, and you can be a strong you can have a strong public voice, but if you don't know the system and you haven't really experienced the system, I think it's really hard to chair those kinds of meetings. And with my experience being in 2 years on the side as a director, watching it happen, and then being a rep and being in it and being in the procedure, I believe I have the tools capable of chairing meetings successfully.
Yeah, I think leadership is the most important part of being the vice president of the UPUA. And I think a lot of it comes down to being able to collaborate with the undergraduate assembly and with the president and with the rest of the assembly and not being divided. And that's something that I did a lot of times in my Marine Corps experience. I was a squad leader, I was an infantry unit, small unit leader commander. And a lot of times we would get units attached to us that had no idea what they were doing. They didn't have the type of specific background that we had, and we had to work with them. And so that's something that I take very to heart, is working with people that don't have the same background and experiences, and bringing those people together to be able to achieve a common goal. And that's the type of experience and the real life experience that I've gained over my time. And then also, you just need to have that strong leadership to be able to bring everyone together, no matter the different backgrounds, and to be able to achieve those goals. And also, I think, bringing a breath of fresh air to the UPUA with being a vice president and the presidency. We need to change things up. And so a lot of that comes with the strong leadership. And no matter what you're leading, I think that's really what's important, is having the real life experience and the strong leadership to be able to serve that role.
Thank you. We have a follow-up to that as well. So Kyle, you can start with this one.
Okay.
One of the main roles as vice president is to assist the president in leading the student body. What is a quality that you possess that complements that of your running mate?
Yeah, we talked about this a lot, and Erin, she has incredible qualities, and she's just awesome. She has a lot of experience, and she's a strong leader. And something that I also bring to the table is that I have a lot of strong leadership experience. Like I was talking about earlier, she has the ins and outs of working in the UPUA. And that's something that I take to heart. And one of my big principles is listen to the guy on the ground. And so Erin, she knows what she's doing when it comes to UPUA stuff. And so it's really important for me to swallow my pride and be able to say, hey, Erin, I'm going to take your lead on this. And I believe that you know what you're talking about when it comes to UPUA, and I'm going to help you facilitate and collaborate to achieve that goal. And so one of the things that I think that I bring to the table is that strong leadership ability. And also, I have a different experience. I'm a 24-year-old student here at Penn State. I'm not a traditional college student. Most college students are 18 to 21 years old, and they come to school here when they're 18, right out of high school. And I didn't do that. I left and I did 4 years service to the country. And so I have a different experience, and I have a different perspective on things that Erin doesn't have. So just being that non-traditional student, I feel like I can connect to a lot of the undergraduate groups and organizations that aren't as traditional as other college organizations.
Yeah, so with Zach and I, we've already had a working relationship in UPUA. We both served as chairs. He was chair of Gov Affairs, and I was the chair of Outreach. And obviously, I think there was one specific initiative that both of our committees worked well together on. It was the State College Sampler, which kind of brought both of our committees together, which is not very often. So we already have this working relationship. And the thing that I think complements each other well is we both have this leadership role. We both have this expansive experience of UPUA. We've seen what it's transitioned from 2 years ago to what it was in the 13th and what it is in the 14th, and exactly where we want to see that change happening. I would definitely say Zach is much more of a how do I say it? A formal. He's very formal. And my personality, I think our personalities kind of complement each other well. He's very formal, but he's one of the kindest people I know. For me, I'm a very casual person. I know I like just getting to know people and having that one-on-one experience with people, which is why the vice president is a role I want to serve in, because I have that. Not only do I do that now, but I can do that in this role and talking individually to students. I think, if anything, we've had a great working relationship in UPUA in our time together, and it's just continuing it in the role of president and vice president. We're both very approachable people. I think we complement each other well in terms of personality, but we also hold each other accountable, which I think is super important. Just because we disagree a lot, actually, just because we are running mates doesn't mean we agree on absolutely everything. I think that's why it makes us unique. We're able to have those conversations and have that discourse, and at the end of the day, do and actively do something that will change the student body for the better. But yeah.
Okay, so In the last question, Lexy, you kind of talked a little bit about the role of vice president as the chair during assembly meetings. And this is one of, if not the primary role of the vice president in UPUA. Now, Kyle, can you specifically speak to any experience you have with presiding over a meeting or utilizing modern rules of order that's used in UPUA assembly meetings?
Yeah, so I don't specifically have like a modern rules of order experience, but I've presided over multiple different meetings. I'm the president of the Veterans Organization. I've sat on committees for the Military Appreciation Week, and I've worked with the committee there. And then also, not in Penn State, but my experience as a Marine. I've done meetings with generals and colonels that have commanded thousands of troops, and I've had to brief them on our plans and our mission and our strategy and our goals. And I've sat on meetings with heads of departments within the Marine Corps, working on fixing the orders and directives that govern water survival. Being that I was an instructor of water survival, we are considered the subject matter experts on all things aquatic and water survival. So regularly we are expected to brief generals and colonels and very high-ranking officials on how to better the Marine Corps' orders and directives and pretty much anything that will govern any type of aquatic event that the Marine Corps does. And that's a huge, huge, large-scale operation. Being that the Marine Corps is an amphibious operation, almost everything we do is somehow related to aquatic events. And so I've sat on multiple meetings and I've chaired meetings as a McQuist, is what we call it, an instructor of water survival, and explained to these people that don't really know what the job is and how they're going to govern these orders. Then also, a big part of being an instructor of water survival is realizing, hey, I was only in the Marine Corps for 4 years. I was a corporal and I was a lower rank than almost every single person I was talking to. And a lot of times you get cut off by much, much higher ranking people and people that expect to be able to speak. And you have to tell them, hey, listen, this is my show and we understand that we're going to hear you out, but you have to be able to listen to us because we are the subject matter experts. And this is what, we know what we're talking about.
Oh, so now we kind of have an interesting question. Each of these questions is directed only at one of you, so this first one's only for Lexy. So, Lexy, let's say that an assembly member, a representative, makes a point of procedure. How would you go about handling that under modern rules of order?
Yeah, so when someone's asking point of procedure, it's usually when someone's like talking out of order, or if they're doing something that's not procedurally correct. Usually if another representative notices that mistake, they'll say point of procedure, is it like, I'm just going to keep it general, but like point of procedure, is this allowed? And my as chairing the meeting, my first understanding is realizing the mistake. I think it takes a second to just understand what happened. And then based off of the rules, acknowledge the representative who brought up the point of procedure. Yes, you're correct, and go back to the order. For example, if someone spoke out of order or if they didn't believe that they were recognized on the floor, you would address them and be like, I apologize. You are on the the stack list, which is like the line of representatives that are in place to speak. And then that's how you'd go about that. Because usually it's another representative pointing out, oh, there's a mistake in your procedure. And they're just pointing that out to the chair just to clarify that mistake.
Hey, now to you, Kyle. Let's say a representative were to make a motion to amend. What procedure would you follow under modern rules?
Yes, this is where I'm going to lean on Aaron. And this is something that I'm not completely versed in modern rules of order. And so this is something that we've been working on. And it's all something that I believe can be taught. And so I have a lot of soft skills and a lot of the leadership abilities that I was talking about and the ability to facilitate the collaboration and teamwork between UPUA, but these are still skills that I need to be taught when it comes to the modern order.
Just for clarification, when you ran the meetings during the meetings and under the veterans organizations and other things, what type of rules did you use? Did you use Robert's Rules of Order? Did you use a different kinds of rules of order? What procedural rules did you use to govern those meetings?
So, I mean, when as the president of the Veterans Organization, we don't have a specific rule of order that we follow. We have an agenda that we set, and then I follow the agenda. In the Marine Corps, we follow the Marine Corps orders that direct and govern meetings, and that's similar to, I guess, Robert's rules of order and the modern rules, but it's also an entirely different because of the way we run our meetings is centered around a whole different thing, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you.
Okay, Lexy, if you could have the unilateral power to fix one pressing issue that faces the Penn State student body, what would that be and why?
Oh my God.
Just one.
Oh my God. Wow. Lord. I was about to say I could go on for an hour. Oh my God. Actually, if I'm going to use one word, I think Penn State could be a lot more equitable. I think the problem that I see in a lot of conversations and a lot of dialogue, both in UPUA, within administration, and also just as like a campus as a whole, is that people have this misconception that equality is what we're fighting for. Equality and equity are not the same thing. That's why when it comes with comes UPUA, we often have this phrase where it's like, oh, but we're helping all students. I don't think that's doing enough, because yes, there are initiatives that inherently do help all students. For example, if it's just trying to gain more economic, it's just trying to make it more equitable for economic inequality that's on campus. That's different for every student, and that's what equity is about. It's different for each person, and you're fighting for each like different story that someone has, because it doesn't affect everyone the same. So I wouldn't say like one specific issue, just because holy wow, there's so much that we could be working on to fix. But if I was going to focus it on one word, it would just be, we could be so much more equitable. We need to be working with different student voices, different communities, to get this done. And I am, as chair of outreach, I've heard this a lot, just from different students, that Penn State could be more equitable. I think they're striving for it, but it definitely could be better, and by a lot. And I think if Zach and I are elected, that's something that is honestly at the forefront of our campaign, is just equitability for as many students, and if not all, but it's based off of a certain situation. And I think it's that difference between equality and equity.
Yeah, I mean, narrowing it down to one problem is absolutely, that's pretty tough. Every Penn Stater has a different experience. And so every Penn Stater is going to have different problems. And there's a lot of small problems that need to be fixed. And so that's why Aaron and I, we came up with our platform that we have 72 initiatives. And on those initiatives, I guarantee, if no matter your background or your experience as a Penn Stater, if you go onto that platform, you will find at least a couple initiatives that will directly help you and that will directly help better your experience. If I were to name off a couple that I think are like great problems that we can fix, it ranges from big problems to small problems. I think one of the ones that I think would be really cool is getting a functional fitness course on the trails around Penn State. And that's one of the things we want to do, is to, a lot of people don't want to go to the gym and they want to work out outside during the summers or during the fall time in the spring. And so being able to put a functional fitness course on a trail is something that I think would be really cool. And then on a different thing, on a different breadth, is, working with Penn State ID services to get digital ID cards. And so actually getting rid of ID cards and putting them onto your Google Wallet or an Apple Wallet is an initiative that we feel really passionate about. So, I mean, saying it all in one big problem, it's pretty tough, but there's a lot of small problems. And if you take a look at our platform, as a Penn Stater, I guarantee you can find at least a couple that'll directly apply to you.
So as a quick follow-up to that, directed at both you and Lexy, but let's start with Lexy. What do you think is the feasibility of you being able to fulfill all of your campaign promises, both of you guys? We know, Lexy, you guys talked about a really fluid model of platform that combines a lot of different issue areas. And Kyle, you talked about how your platform has 72 different initiatives that you and Aaron are trying to would try to put in place if elected. So what is the feasibility of you guys being able to enact all of these initiatives from both of you? But let's start with Lexy.
So one of the problems that I've noticed that if we want to solve or at least try to get done everything that we have on our platform, a dialogue has to be made first. And that's why we have a living and breathing platform, because we're constantly talking to students about that feasibility. Yeah, we could have had a full-length platform ready to go on day one, but we realized that if we wanted to be a platform that encompasses like the student body, why not have student voices a part of that platform? Have student ideas a part of that platform, and then cite who we talked to and what we talked about. And I think that's super important because along with feasibility, it's about, did you have conversations with the right people? Did you go to the right resources and seeing if this is even feasible? We've already started doing that with a lot of our initiatives and going to and just fleshing them out with students and saying, hey, we've noticed that you work in this center. Do you think this is something possible? And even if it's not, I think the most important thing is that we're fighting for it. I think even if someone says to my face, like, oh, that's not feasible, or that like, you guys can't do that, I'm going to tell you back that I'm going to fight for it. And I think that at least bringing up the conversation is super important. And I feel like the biggest thing with UPUA is oftentimes those student voices or the student voices that aren't typically heard are usually not in those rooms. And again, a big part of our platform is elevating student voices. And I believe that to do that rightfully so is to have those conversations early on, like we're doing now. We've also had these conversations before we were just as reps, as advocating for students. We've already been in the process of these conversations. If anything, it's continuing our work and continuing the fight, because and having those dialogues in the room of administration. There's a lot that isn't brought to them, and the reason why there is UPUA is so that administration can hear those needs, and Zach and I are willing to fight for that.
Yeah, I think, I think feasibility is extremely important. And I think that all 72 of our initiatives are feasible, and they're also all very important. I think it's a waste of time to have initiatives that are not feasible. And, I think it's a waste of time to spend time on doing all these things that aren't really going to happen. And so, I believe that regardless of if you're fighting or not for an issue, I think it should be feasible. And that's where, respectfully, I disagree, Lexy. I think fighting for an issue is important, but I don't think that we should waste our time fighting for issues that are not going to become a reality. And I do believe that all 72 of our initiatives are feasible.
I respond back. I don't know.
Yeah, guys, remember, if you wish to respond, use the raise hand feature.
Okay.
And the participants, that way we can just have everything carry on. We understand it's confusing with everything going on, so we totally understand that, but if we could use that to facilitate responses, that would be great. So Lexi, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say back that a lot of the times an answer that we've gotten in UPUA for a lot of our initiatives has been, oh, that's not feasible. One of them being actually what we passed yesterday was the university scholarship webpage. That was told to a previous chair that it wasn't feasible, and then this year we were able to get it done. So a lot of what we think can't be feasible is something that we should continue to fight for, even if we're said no the first time. A lot of our initiatives are feasible, like right off the bat, like they can get done, but I don't think we should just like say no to something just because one person says that's not possible. I think we should be exploring as many avenues as possible to be like, how far can we go with this initiative? Because that's just how passionate I am about getting certain student voices in there and getting some issues in the room that have never been talked about to administration.
Okay. So let's move on. So we talked about the university as a whole. What do each of you see as the biggest weakness in UPUA, and how, if you are elected, will you help to fix that? And let's start with Kyle.
Yeah, so after speaking with a lot of members in UPUA, and from what I've heard from Aaron and a lot of other people, what again, narrowing it down to one thing is pretty tough. What I've heard been brought up a lot is a lack of leadership and collaboration with other organizations. That's why I think Aaron and I will be such a strong leadership team that'll help fix these issues, because we're really interested in collaborating with other groups and organizations better and just creating like a good leadership example for others to follow.
Okay. What I'd have to say back also is that there's this lack of leadership, but also this lack of cohesion between the branches. I think something that's super important that, yes, if me and Zach are elected, we would be a part of the executive branch, but that doesn't necessarily mean we don't like communicate with representatives at all. I think that was one of our biggest problems, was that branch cohesion. If anything, if me and Zach are elected, I think it's important to have that kind of relationship with representatives, both previously serving as reps and also just being there as kind of like a soundboard, but also to have that relationship where if we want to relay things to administration, we have that solid relationship with representatives where they can reach out to us and be like, hey, this is an issue, or this is something that I'm working on and I'm kind of coming up with some barriers here. Can you help me out? I think that relationship needs to be established more, just so that representatives know the relationship is fluid. But I think that's been one of the biggest problems, is the cohesion between the two branches, and then having leadership that's strong enough to like keep that relationship strong. I don't think that there should be this message of like, oh, like we're not in the legislative branch, like that we can't do that, or like that's the speaker's job. Genuinely, it should be a lot more of like a teamwork based, like it should be more of like a team rather than like separate like little working groups. And that's how I felt like UPUA has been for the past couple of years. And there definitely needs just to be more cohesion.
So the next question we have is, Lexy, can you talk about your current relationship with the Penn State administration and how you would interact with them on behalf of the student body if elected?
Yeah. So serving as chair of outreach, obviously one of my biggest things as chair of outreach was I wanted to have a focus, because I feel like when you have 1,000 organizations, the role of outreach is a lot harder than people think. And if you don't have that kind of focus, it can kind of get messy in what you're trying to work towards. So specifically, like one of my focuses this year was strengthening relationships with multicultural organizations on campus and the caucuses. And with that, I was able, when you work with these communities directly and when you're working with students directly, with administration, I don't want to be someone that's bringing up like my own needs. It's more of working with steering. It's working at the assembly, the legislation that we're working on, what's going to be brought up, but also listening to students that aren't in the room. Because like all representatives, that's kind of what they should be doing, is kind of interacting with the student body, what they see as an issue. But I don't think like we should be extending ourselves also to people outside of the organization in different communities and things that we may not understand fully in their issues. That's kind of goes back to the whole equality and equity thing. And in saying that, I'm someone that if I hear an issue, especially if it's someone's passionate about it, I want to see the feasibility of actually having their voice in the room. I can't speak better than the person who's experiencing a problem for themselves. And even if I'm the one that has to like relay that kind of message, I'm someone that's willing to, again, to be a good leader, to be a strong leader, you have to listen. And if you don't listen, you're not going to be able to relay as effectively to the administration what the student body wants. Because at the end of the day, we're advocates, and we're advocates for the students to administration, and we're that link. So again, it's about building relationships. It's about really listening about what are problems that students are facing. And I think my biggest role is to honestly be the best listener that I can be, and also just see the feasibility of bringing those students into the room.
So I think, I don't know if the question was misread or whatever, but we kind of want to know more how you would interact with Penn State administration on behalf of the student body instead of like interacting with the student body. Can you talk more about how you would interact with the administration and any like relationships that you have right now with them?
Yeah, so I don't have many relationships. If anything, I've had like individual meetings with different like directors, like the director for the Center of Sexual and Gender Diversity I've met with a couple times, Carlos Wiley from the PRCC. I believe I've worked with a faculty administration. Apologize, I'm blanking on the name right now, but I've been in a couple rooms with administration, some directors of different centers, but I think it's a way of being honest. Of course, it's still that professional relationship, and I believe like this kind of understanding of it, like that relationship of like your UPUA and their administration, but also understanding where like messaging to them where exactly you're coming from. It's not that if I disagree with them, it's because I'm like I'm being, what's the word? Like I'm not trying to do it to like get them mad. I'm just because I'm a kid. It's because this is this like need that I've heard from students. This is a problem and I'm disagreeing with how we should go about it. Or like I'm disagreeing with, oh, you should take a pause on it. I think it's really important that you're willing to disagree, because a lot of the fear is that if you do, it's an administration, oh, they're super high up, that you can't do that. But I think you need leaders that are willing to disagree, because discourse is honestly what brings about the best change. And even if it's with the student body in the assembly room, but you should also be able to do that with administration. Because I think also when you have that kind of civil discourse, you build stronger relationships, because they actually see like, oh, you're really working for this. And I've actually seen that from a lot of administration. They want to see our ideas and they want to see what students are talking about, because we have that connection. It's about being honest and about really not being afraid to disagree ultimately.
Yeah, and then, I agree. It can be intimidating to work with administrators for a lot of people. Almost daily, I work with Eugene McFeely. He's the Senior Director for Veterans Affairs and Services. And he's almost my direct boss. And so I've working with him on multiple projects. I've worked with him during the Military Appreciation Week, during a veterans panel. I've worked with him to open the new Student Veterans Center. And I've also spoken with Dr. Barron at the ribbon cutting ceremony for the new Student Veterans Center. And then I've also been invited to Dr. Barron's house for a strategic communication initiative with a lot of the deans of the university. So I have a pretty strong relationship with administrators, and I'm very comfortable standing my ground as well as collaborating with administration to achieve a common goal. And that's something I've learned from the Marine Corps. As I've said, I've given briefs to generals and colonels who command thousands of troops and real life missions that that actually could mean human lives are at stake. And most of the time they do mean human lives are at stake, actually all the time. And so I have no problem and no intimidation from administrators, standing my ground and collaborating with them. But also I feel that being a little older than the general student body, I can relate to administrators on a closer level. And I feel that they look to me with a little more, they look to me as a different perspective than what a lot of the students do. And so like Lexy mentioned earlier, she doesn't want to be seen as a kid, and I totally get that. And that's something I feel strongly about, and I feel like I can bring that to the administration table.
So we're going to bring this back a little bit to your platforms again. And especially, we want you each to focus on one specific part or one specific initiative of your platform that you personally feel is the most important to you. And could you please explain to us how step by step you would get that initiative either enacted or passed through UPUA? What steps would you take to get what you consider your most important initiative through UPUA? And let's start with Kyle.
Yeah, so most important, gosh, that's so tough again. I'll talk about promoting RSO events. I think that is super important. I think it's something that we have on our initiative that UPUA has struggled with in the past, and that is the relationship with registered student organizations. And so our plan is, well, currently, UPUA is not the best at promoting registered student organization events, as well as collaborating with them on their own events. And so what Aaron and I want to do is we want to actually create a calendar and work with the Penn State Student Life to create a calendar, and actually work with the Penn State Go app as well, and get this calendar that is essentially a student organization can opt into this calendar and put an event that they have onto the calendar, and then other student organizations will do the same. And then if you opt in, a student can open up the Penn State Go app, click on the calendar, and then they'll see a huge list of events that are happening with registered student organizations. I think it's something that not only will it get the word out between registered student organizations events, but it's going to help better the community. There's lots of events that student organizations do that just are huge helps to the community and can help a lot of people. And so it'll get the word out, but then also it's going to create a relationship with those student organizations between the UPUA for future collaboration. And that's something, again, that the UPUA is lacking right now. And so I think that's super important for us to have.
Can I ask a question back, or should it? Yes? Okay.
Can you say it one more time?
Can I ask a question back, or should I answer the question?
So we ask you, you can answer the question we gave, and then at the end of your response, you can ask a question.
Sounds good. All right. I just want to know the procedure. I would say definitely right now. I mentioned it in the beginning, but we have to be cognizant of current issues that students are going through. And I have to say that the COVID-19 pandemic that is currently affecting all of us, I can definitely say that for sure, is actually a crisis, because it's affecting a lot of students. And again, it goes back to that equality equity issue. It's not affecting everyone the same. As we had the rollout of our platform, the first thing that we wanted to do on day one was address what students were going through in that moment, and addressing this isn't a normal time for a campaign period. People are actively, they are out of a job because campus is closed and they no longer can make money to pay off rent. They no longer have have as much access to CAPS as they would on campus. So now their mental health is suffering. And going back to students not being able to get paid, to pay for rent, that's something that needs to be addressed. And I think one of our biggest things right now is navigating that with our campaign. We made it one of our pillars. It's a prominent part of our platform right now. And it's because we heard of all of these different issues coming about because of the crisis. And I think it's important that you're cognizant of that. And you can't ignore that, especially with all of us going through it. For example, with UPUA, we advocated for student pay for those who couldn't return to their jobs. And that was successful, as Penn State did follow through with that. And then yesterday, we also passed a resolution in encouraging also administration to explore the proration of tuition. Obviously, we're student advocates, and the one thing that we can do is at least bring that issue up to students. Some are out of state, some are paying larger tuition and not getting the same services, and having that dialogue with administration and saying, hey, this is an issue that students are having. How can we talk about this? How can we go about going forward with this? So I would say the biggest focus of our platform has definitely been the crisis that we're all going through right now. And I think just dealing with the problems that we're facing right now is super important. And yeah, I think it's definitely taken a focus of our campaign.
So Lexy, you said you had a question?
Yeah, so with the calendar, how do you encourage students to opt in? Because there are over 1,000 organizations on campus. Some we don't have the best relationship with, / we need to be strengthening those relationships. I just wanted to see how you guys would encourage that opt-in for them to periodically do it.
Yeah, and that all comes down to just collaborating and reaching out to organizations. Whether that's Greek life organizations, whether that is other recognized student organizations, it's up to them. If they want to opt in and they want to put their events on the calendar, then their events will be on the calendar. I don't see any organization saying, no, we really don't want to be on the calendar because we don't want people to come to our events. as long as they're an event that's open to the public, if it's a private event for that, organization, that's another thing. But if it's a public event, I would say that almost every single organization wants more participation from the student body. I can tell you, as the president of the Veterans Organization, unfortunately we had to reschedule our event for April 26th, but myself and the Penn State Marines organization, we were working on, or the Penn State Marine Student Organization, we're working on doing a mental health awareness and suicide prevention 5K. And we had goals of getting lots and lots of participation. And so we reached out to different organizations saying, hey, would you guys be interested in at least having us come talk to you at a meeting about this event? And, I don't think anyone told us outright no. And, as the president of the Veterans Organization, I would love to have events on a calendar that everyone could see.
Okay, so both of you guys have talked about different parts of your platforms that are important to you, but UPUA has been making admirable strides to diversify the voices in the organization. So how do you plan on ensuring the continuation of this trend? Did I cut out, or did you guys hear the question?
A little bit.
I can read it again if you want me to.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay. UPUA has been making admirable strides to diversify the voices in the organization. How do you plan on ensuring the continuation of this trend? Kyle, you can start first.
Yeah, so, I agree. How do we continue? I think it's going to take strong leadership, and, part of Aaron and I's platform is, based off of that strong leadership, and specifically in myself, in my own role, as the president of the Veterans Organization, I advocated for veterans, and veterans are a protected group. And we are definitely a small minority of the population. And, something that we were thinking is possibly getting, having veterans apply to be one of the seats for a represented seat in UPUA. And then also, it's a matter of keeping that trend going and just following through. We have great members of UPUA, doing this right now. And so we want to encourage that teamwork and that facilitation and that collaboration to be able to keep moving forward.
I would actually say that within UPUA, definitely it's been one of the most diverse assemblies that we've seen, but unfortunately it also comes down to addressing the problem, because a lot of students of color have not felt welcome in UPUA. And I think one of the biggest things is addressing that problem. I've always thought about this, but it's about that nature and that environment that the people in UPUA bring. As president and vice president and as steering, we are also tasked with appointing different positions for directors, but also, for example, the assembly also then gets to elect their different chairs. I think it's important, and an important question for people to ask: are you going to bring about people and appoint people that have these different perspectives and have these different stories? But I also just think it's important to directly address the problem that we're having in UPUA, where students of color, at least many, have voiced that they did not feel welcome. I believe there were 5 to 6 resignations of students of color last year because of this exact reason. Of course, I'd love to diversify the voice of UPUA, and because that ultimately strengthens it when you have that many different voices. But when you don't address the problem, it makes it that much worse. And then your work is also affected because you don't feel safe or you don't feel welcome. And I think that's something that a lot of people definitely face in UPUA. And if you don't address it, then it's not going to be as effective assembly as you want.
Thank you guys both. So this next question, and we're going to start again with you, Kyle, was the most requested question by far of the student body when they submitted questions for this and the presidential debate. So UPUA has a history of being influenced by special interest groups, including secret societies. Are you affiliated with Skull and Bones, Parami Nu, or Lion's Paw? And if you're not, can you make a pledge today to remain unaffiliated and reject membership with these groups during your term as vice president if elected?
Hey, 2 months ago, I didn't even know there were, any secret societies on campus. Once I started kind of paying closer attention to UPUA and the politics of the organization, I heard about the controversy that they create and, the tour, whatever. I don't, honestly, I don't think they even merit the extensive discussion and scrutiny that they're typically associated with. And so, I think we're wasting time when we came here to talk about issues that affect Penn State students. And, like I said, I think most Penn State students don't even know that there's secret societies on campus. And I think it's just a waste of time to talk about that.
So Kyle, I'm going to very briefly push back right there. We need a specific answer. Are you or is your campaign affiliated with one of those secret societies? And if you're not, will you make a pledge today to remain unaffiliated?
Yeah, like I said, I don't think the topic merits discussion, and I'm not going to answer that question.
So I'm going to say no, I am not a part of any of the three, or actually any at all. Frankly, in UPUA, I have to push back. We're not creating the issues. I think it's been a problem of having this affiliation. It's also not something that should be looked at as if you are in a secret society. It's like, oh, you're automatically a bad person. That shouldn't be the perception at all either. It's definitely like based off the individual. I think for some, it's become exclusive within UPUA when you are a membership or not. It's this idea that those that are above you, and then those aren't at that level. I think it's created a lot of toxic relationships in UPUA, if I'm being honest, especially being in it for 2 years and hearing it constantly. I will agree it doesn't constitute the amount that should be talked about, just because I don't think it's like worth it. I don't think, if I'm being honest, it does affect UPUA, but at the same time, I don't waste your breath on it just because I don't think it's deserved. I don't think that they don't deserve that kind of recognition, if I'm being honest. But I can rightfully say that I'm not a part of any of those organizations, and nor will I be.
Thank you, Lexy. Now, Kyle, as a follow-up question to that, you stated you don't want to answer this question, yet your constituents, the electors, overwhelmingly, this is the question that they want answered from their candidates. Now, when looking at your endorsements, one of your endorsements is from Jessica Mentz, who was listed on Org Central as the point of contact or the primary contact for Skull and Bones. Is this Skull and Bones endorsement one of the reasons why you don't want to answer this question?
No. Like I said, this is, it's been brought to my attention that this has caused like meetings to last longer in UPUA, and it's been this thing that's just wasting time. And we should be talking about the important issues that the student body, wants to run through, and whether or not the secret society, it's not an issue. And so, I don't merit that kind of scrutiny and discussion. I think we need to get away from that within UPUA because it wastes time, frankly.
Can I respond to that?
Briefly.
Okay. I'm just going to say that I would disagree that it hasn't caused issues in UPUA, because it has. For someone who's been in the organization for 2 years and constantly hearing about it, it's definitely a problem, especially brought up by a whole different, like so many different reps throughout the years. Yes, it's like our focus is to focus on the student body, but I believe that this affiliation has ultimately led to these toxic relationships and this idea of a power hierarchy, just as individuals, whether or not you are in that organization or not. I think that needs to be removed, because again, if you're not addressing the issue, it's never going to be solved, and you're perpetuating this constant environment of toxicity, which as a vice president, I will not allow. It's not warranted, and frankly, it's definitely been an issue. So to say that it hasn't is not right, because a lot of representatives have said that it is.
Now, in the interest of fairness and equity, Lexy, your campaign has been endorsed by Celeste Good, who is a known member of Pi Army Nu. Now, this question is to both you and Kyle, not just about secret societies, but about RSOs as a whole. How will you stop organizations from having unfair outside influence on UPUA and decisions made by representatives, executive board members, judicial board members as a whole? And why don't we start with Lexy?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't know that. Zach has worked with Celeste extensively in the past couple of years. We've known each other kind of in passing, but I've known of her as being a strong advocate for for QDPOC and for the queer community on campus, and I've always looked up to her for that. I'm actually kind of surprised that you said that right now. But to emphasize, our campaign hasn't been using those kinds of channels to get endorsements at all. So I'm going to be super honest about that. And in terms of moving forward, I think increased transparency is super important, and that's something that me and Zach have always been running on, both as at-large reps, both as when I came in as a director, I was adamant about being transparent about all my affiliations on this campus and exactly who I am. And I think that's super important from a leader, because if the leader themselves are not willing to be fully transparent, then I don't understand why you would be then messaging that. For the future, I mean, I think it's about working with the assembly, but also just emphasizing that transparency where it's like, your affiliation does matter. Obviously with some circumstances, obviously I don't want to reveal the affiliation if it's a hindrance to that person, especially with their identity. But with secret societies, I wouldn't say like, oh, that's a part of my identity. I think that's something that should be relayed. And if anything, if that individual, if they are in a secret society, as long as they are focused on the goal of advocating for students, and it's not for a selfish need, and it's not to elevate themselves even more, then I'm willing to have them in the room. I just think the focus needs to be on the students, and I don't think it's been about that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the question again was, how are you going to stop student organizations from having an outside influence on UPUA, correct?
Just to clarify, it's how will you stop organizations as a whole from having unfair influence on UPUA?
Yeah.
Not just student organizations, just organizations in general.
Right. Yeah, I think it's as simple as just it's a zero tolerance policy and not allowing it. And that's Aaron and I, we're not going to get pushed around by any organization, no matter what they are, or how secret they are, or how public they are. We have never run on that type of campaign. We're not trying to get pushed around by any type of organization, and that's, it's zero tolerance. It's as simple as that. I feel very comfortable standing my ground, and like I was saying earlier, I have a tough background as a Marine. I've been through harsh times and I've done rough things, and I feel comfortable standing my ground and saying no and having a zero tolerance policy for that kind of outside influence. And Aaron is the same way. That's why we ran together, is we're both strong leaders and we have that tough ethic. And so yeah, it's as simple as having a zero tolerance to that kind of stuff.
Okay. So in the past, the branches of UPUA have been somewhat divided, as Lexy had spoke about earlier. So how will each of you work towards making all branches of UPUA feel equal and respected in the 15th December? So Lexy, you can start.
Yeah, so it's funny, I brought it up as one of the biggest issues in UPUA, and I think this is super important. Obviously in the past, there have been people that have joked about the J board and being like, oh, like, why do you want to be a part of the J board? And it's like, actually, you guys, if I'm not trying to like hype y'all up just because it's like you guys are chairing this debate, but you guys are the people that keep everything fair and equitable. Frankly, with the elections code, making sure that it's cohesed throughout the whole way, which unfortunately why it was rejected, I think, the second time. And also, in addition, you guys are the reason why we remain and how we can continue to remain and have that extra level of being fair and equitable throughout the whole process. You guys are an equal branch. And I think that respect also just starts with the leadership. That starts with the representatives. That starts with each other first. And then when you have that mutual respect for each other, it emulates to the rest of the media and when it's presented. I think this year it's unfortunately been clear that even the executive board, they've been labeled as like, oh, they just put on events and that's it. It's like, I've been a director. there's a lot of work that goes into being a director, and that's why I value them so much, especially as an at-large rep. I know the work that goes into it, and if not more work than I did, especially like being student life director with the amount of programming weeks you put on, like I can only imagine like the amount of work that is. But I think in terms of improving that relationship and making sure it is a co-equal, like branches all around, it's that mutual respect. And unfortunately, I have been seeing it, but that respect has to trickle down from the leadership, because if it doesn't come from the leadership, it's not going to come from the reps. And I think also that encouragement to say, we're the leaders of this organization, and we believe that J-Board is an equal branch. It's about that communication. And I think it needs to be way more prevalent.
Yeah, I agree with Lexy there. It really starts top down. And so setting that strong example, that strong leadership example is really important. And then not only that, but you have to find a different way to lead every different person. People have different backgrounds, and so you need to lead people differently. And it's the same way with groups of people as it is with individuals. I remember my time when I was a squad leader, I had a team leader that was always giving me issues, and he was just making it difficult to really achieve the mission. And I realized that I was treating them all as one team leader, and in a squad, there's 4 teams. And there's 4 team leaders, and I treated everyone as one specific team leader. And I found out that that's not the way you do it. That's not the way you do things. Each person has a different way they need to be led. And so what I found out is, after figuring out that this person needs a lot more responsibility to be able to do great things. So I gave him the responsibility, and I gave him a leash, and I said, just run with it, and I hoped he wouldn't choke himself with it, and he didn't. And that really comes down to leadership experience and setting that positive example, and that a lot of that comes down to steering. We're going to harp on steering to be that strong leadership example. And, the 14th Assembly had its problems with steering, and that's why we're here now trying to correct those issues. That's why we are so divided, and hopefully with the 15th Assembly, that steering committee will set a strong example and be able to trickle down to all the at-large representatives and everyone else.
So over the course of even just the last week, you guys have both announced very many endorsements from a variety of different people, from athletes to student leaders. Can you please name 3 endorsements that you are excited to receive, and describe your personal or professional relationship with these endorsements and why you feel you are a, quote, endorsable candidate? Let's start with you, Kyle.
Yeah, so one of the endorsements that I'm really excited about is Eric Wilson. We have yet to post his information out, but he is the president of the Veterans Fraternity here at Penn State. I work with him a lot, and so I'm very excited about that. Another person is Christian Laparn. He is a good friend of mine from different classes we've had, and actually he's a mutual friend between a veteran friend of mine. And then another endorsement I'm really excited about is Nick Lee, the wrestler. Really good friends with him. He's a great guy. And so those, like, being an endorsable candidate, it comes down to, we're showing them our platform, and we're telling them, hey, this is what we want to do for you. And if you want to endorse us, then please endorse us. If not, then endorse someone else, or don't endorse us. That's fine. But here's what we want to do. And judging by like how you've seen me work, I know Eric, I constantly work with him. He is the Veterans Fraternity president. I work with him a lot, so he knows how I work, and we work well together. And then also, just being able to say, this is what we want to do for the student body. Would you like to endorse us?
Oh my God. We've had a lot of people that have endorsed us or will be endorsing us with the conversations that we've been having. A lot of them have just looked at our platform, but it's also just people that we've worked in the past, and we've had this working relationship because we've seen the issues that they've gone through and their communities have gone through, and we want to continue to advocate for them. So it's not like it's like this new conversation. It's as if like, hey, we got your back. Like, what do you need? And they're like, well, we're going to endorse you because you've had our back. And I think that's super important. For one, I think it was our first one actually, Freddie Purnell. He is, I can't even explain to him, like put him into words, but he is absolutely amazing. He's the president of Lions Pride, but he also was the recipient of the for homecoming this year, which if you guys know is like huge. He's done amazing work on this campus, and he's always been an advocate for the queer community, for the Black community, and just for underrepresented communities in general. And I admire his advocacy as a whole. So when he reached out and said, hey, guys, I really want to endorse you, it was an honor. I love to see that. And yeah, that was super exciting. So there's so many that were awesome. I have to say Nicole Yar Andrade, she's the president of Latino Caucus. I went to many of the Latino Caucus meetings last year. I unfortunately couldn't go to as many this year just because of my involvement in all of my organizations, but we still maintain that connection of like, our professional relationship is actually what made us into friends. And I think to get her endorsement was super special because we want to be representing, we want to be advocating for those underrepresented communities because a lot of the times their voices are not heard. So to get her endorsement was awesome. I think it was just that exemplifying that the work that we've started and done before is just continuing and we're not stopping. And then another one was Maddie Mitchell. She's the president of the Council of Sustainable Leaders. I actually actively worked with her this past year, unfortunately for something that got postponed for the monthly meet and greet with sustainability organizations, but she was also working with us for Sustained State, which was through Student Life, which also unfortunately got canceled. She's absolutely amazing, and our platform, a lot of it, if not most of it, is focused on the sustainability of not just environmentally, not just socially, but just as a whole, as for UPUA, improving your student government, and as Penn State as a whole, how can we be as sustainable as possible? And to get her endorsement was, again, an honor, because that just meant she read through our platform and just said, you guys blew me out of the water. You guys are definitely the ones that I want to endorse. So I was appreciative of those three. I could go on, but if I'm going to highlight three, those were definitely ones that I was excited about.
Okay, thank you. So both of you guys have talked about other organizations you're involved in on this campus. So what other extracurricular experiences do you have outside of UPUA, and how do you think they will help you fulfill the office of Vice President? So Lexy, you can start.
Yeah, so my affiliation outside of UPUA, I am a line ambassador. Unfortunately, I was a new line ambassador, so my first semester in the org got cut short because of the pandemic, but I've been in constant communication with everyone, and I'm super excited to continue that. That I feel like feeds on to the idea of my passion for Penn State. Line Ambassadors is basically an organization that is about that. It's about service, it's about tradition, it's about excellence, and it's about pride. And I feel like that those aspects of Line Ambassadors I definitely would bring to Vice President, because I do have a passion for Penn State. And then I'm also the secretary for College Democrats. This is more because I'm a political science major and I want to pursue a career in politics later in life. I believe in advocacy. I believe in true grassroots work. And I believe with College Dems, this is where I was getting that experience. And I've met so many of my best friends through this org. I'm also a part of Line Caucus, which is basically an organization that helps to advocate to local, state, and federal legislators about Penn State, especially in appropriations and increasing that, and then also just developing a stronger relationship with legislators. That's also just, I'm very passionate about advocacy, and I feel like Line Caucus is just another part of that, tying it into Penn State and that passion. I feel like all of those organizations have to do with advocacy in one way or another. And if anything, a lot to do with the passion that you have for Penn State. And I think one of the things that if you want to be the leader of UPUA, yes, be a good listener, but it's also to know that you have the ability to change Penn State for the better. And I think when you have that passion and when you have that pride, it makes your drive for it that much stronger. But yeah, I mean, I was a part of Thon, I was in an R&R committee. Yeah, and in terms of just like hobbies, I love to sing and just musically involved. I feel like a lot of the performing arts students are very much underrepresented. So I believe that kind of affiliation also improves my understanding of their needs, because they are very different from an average student. So yeah, I don't know if there was another part of that question.
No, you got it. Kyle, if you could answer the question, and then you can ask your question to Lexy.
Okay, could you, so we were talking about outside involvements and how that's going to help vice presidency, correct? So, you know, as well as being a veteran mentor. So I'll talk about that. Like I said, so I work with Office Veterans Affairs, or the Office of Veterans Programs, excuse me, as a veteran mentor. And what my job is there is to pretty much advocate for veterans to the office and to Penn State. So being that, you know, I've worked with communities that are not represented well, and veterans are one of those communities that are not represented well. And I feel that that'll help me a lot in the vice presidency. And also, you know, I've done peer-to-peer counseling with veterans. I've helped them with their transitions, and mostly like I enjoy it. I love it. You know, that's a big passion of mine. I love giving back to veterans, obviously, and then I wanted to give back to more of the student body. But you know, that's a huge passion of mine, is meeting new people and helping them with their transition and stuff like that. With that, I'm also an outdoor adventures trip leader. So I work for Campus Rec on campus here. Unfortunately, all of our trips got canceled. Sorry for everyone that signed up. But I'm a whitewater rafting guide. I'm a backpacking guide, as well as a big part of that job is being a facilitator. And so, you know, whenever we take a group of 10 to 12 people or however many people, you need to understand the group dynamics. And part of that is we go through facilitator training, and I've been through, you know, countless, over 50 hours of facilitator training in facilitating group dynamics. And so that's facilitating teamwork and collaboration. And so we'll have special programs come up to us and say, hey, you know, a corporation will come up and say, hey, we want our constituents or our subordinates to learn how to work together as a team. We want them to focus on teamwork, and we want you guys to help build them. So we'll take them out to the high ropes course or the low ropes course or wherever. We'll do an activity with them, and we debrief them, and we give them special, you know, pointers throughout, and kind of just facilitate that teamwork and collaboration, and kind of give them that aha moment where they're like, oh, okay, that's what that activity was for. Now I understand, and I feel much closer and bonded with these people. So super passionate about the outdoors, you know, just something personal about myself. And then also I think that facilitation really helps with the vice presidency as a whole. And then my question for Lexy is, you mentioned being part of the college Dems. Like, how do you feel that will affect the UPUA, being that UPUA is supposed to be a nonpartisan group, you know, and do you feel that that's important, and how do you feel that there will be any type of influence from the college Dems into your campaign into UPUA?
Yeah. Obviously, as being in UPUA for the past 2 years and also being a college Democrat, I've maintained that nonpartisanship. I think for myself, obviously, I'm someone that loves civil discourse. So obviously, when two people disagree, if I disagree with someone, I like to hear both sides of it. And I think that's super important when you're, for example, chairing a meeting, or if you're talking to representatives as in the role of being vice president. I think it's important that you hear both sides of it. You hear like the different ways that someone wants to go about approaching legislation. If I'm being honest, it's based upon the person. And since I've been in UPUA for 2 years and also like on the side, also been a part of college Democrats as well, I've never let my partisanship in that org come into UPUA because I know it's nonpartisan. And I believe that's still an integral part of UPUA. I would say I'm not influenced at all. Again, I think for myself, I voice my concerns based off of what I'm hearing, but also what I think is the best plan of action, because I think your own opinion is super important. But at the end of the day, it's about bettering student lives, and I don't think there's anything political about that.
Thanks.
So both of you have talked about a lot of other orgs, and you guys seem very passionate about what you're involved in. So if you're elected into the vice presidency, how much time do you expect UPUA to take away from the other orgs that you're in? Because obviously it's a big commitment. So Lexy, you can start.
Yeah, so I've actually actively, I am not running for re-election in College Democrats. I'm not running for re-election in Lion Caucus as I'm currently treasurer, because I understand the time commitment of what vice president is for UPUA. I'm completely devoted to the role because I believe that I want to be an advocate for as many students as possible. And if that's the case, that means having as much time as possible. I've actively made these steps for that reason. Especially with Lion ambassadors, once you are in the org, obviously with touring, it's just maintaining a schedule. I'm an organized freak. So I have a Google Calendar, I have a set planner, just making sure that I'm on schedule in terms of like which different tours I take, or if I have a general body meeting, which is actually every Thursday. So it's actually, my time commitment has gone very low because of my taking a step back from all of these organizations. But that's also because I'm aware that I want to put my heart and soul into this role. Although like I can always go to a meeting here and there if I do have time, that's the sole reason. And I'm devoted to putting a lot of time into this role.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am going to have to, give up some things. And, I realize that there are sacrifices that need to be made. And so I'm not going to be working with Outdoor Adventures anymore. This is going to be my last semester there. And then as far as the Veterans Organization, I've been just completely transparent with the rest of the team there, with my vice president and the secretary and treasurer and all of our leadership, that, hey, you guys know, like, I'm going to be relying on you a lot during these next couple of weeks during the campaigning, but also if I get elected. So just being transparent with them that I'm going to be relying on them. And then also, it comes down to, so we get elected for the Veterans Organization in fall, and then you serve spring to fall. So you get elected at the end of fall, serve spring to fall. So I'll have the spring, or the rest of the spring semester, and the little bit that's left of the spring semester and fall as president, and then I will not be running for re-election again. Same reason for Lexy. I think it's really important that you really commit 100% to one thing and not go 50% on 10 other things. And so that's just sacrifices that need to be made. And also, Lexy, I would highly recommend the Panda Planner. It is a great planner. I use it every day, and that's kind of the same way. I'm very organized, so check it out.
I actually am doing that.
All right. So thank you guys for both giving all of your extracurricular activities. We can see how passionate you are about all of them. But we know that both of you are making a sacrifice if elected the vice president, giving up time in other activities you might really enjoy. So we just want to thank you for that. But one thing that was actually mentioned by both candidates during the course of this debate was the idea of community group seats in UPUA. So starting with Kyle, can you list out the community group seats that currently have a seat, the process by which a community group might reach out in order to get a seat, and what current relationships you have with the communities who currently have or are currently seeking a community group seat?
Yeah, so, I don't think I could name all of them off the top of my head, but, we have the Students of Color, the LPITA organization, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. But then, it's as simple as, so I believe it's fall is when you can actually submit a form through UPUA to get a seat on the community groups. And so, like I said earlier, like one of the things that we'd be interested in doing is getting veterans to get a community group seat. And, I don't think there's any question as to how I've worked with veterans before, being that I'm the president of the Veterans Organization, but also like, just working with, different diversities. In the Marine Corps, you get just a hodgepodge of hundreds and thousands of different people that you're going to be working with for 4 years of your life, every day of your life, 24/7, and that's it. So working with people that have different backgrounds and different ideals, like I did that every single day. And, a lot of that comes down to, respecting that they're going to have different backgrounds, different ideas. And again, same thing, like I said earlier, is you need to lead people differently, and just recognizing that and realizing that it's going to be different and you need to lead them differently. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so currently we have three, like in the 14th, we had 3 community group seats. It was for Black Caucus, Latino Caucus, and UPUA Caucus. And then transitioning into the 15th, there were 2 more community group seats that were approved. They were for Lions Pride. If anything, it's to represent the queer community, and then International Student Council to represent the international student community, which is all communities that are unrepresented, which is why I was like a huge advocate for these community group seats in the first place. And I'm also a huge advocate for having a veterans community group seat. I think that would be super beneficial. What was the other parts of the question? It was long.
Yep. So if a community group were to come up to you and ask, how do we get this seat? We want this seat. How do we get it? How would you walk them through the process? And can you talk a little bit about your current relationship with the current community group seat organizations?
Yeah, so the process is basically like the J board has to approve that of like their like constitution in a way, just to like validate their like RSO. And in that way, it's basically I would get them in touch with the Chief Justice, because that's primarily where where the process would happen. And there's actually like a certain deadline in the spring semester. It's fairly early. I don't know the exact date, but I think it's like in February or so, that it's where like the cutoff for like community group seats to apply for a seat. But yeah, if anyone ever approached me about that, I would get them in connection with the Chief Justice and kind of walk them through the process of what happens. It's just kind of like making sure that their RSO is active, that they have an active membership list. It's just to make sure that their constitution and bylaws are secure, just as an RSO in general. And then that's how the process that you go about it. And my relationship with the community group seats have been actually, I believe, all 3 of them sat on outreach, so I had that direct relationship. I believe the UPETA representative, Yujin, she actually had rehearsals on the night of committee, but I would meet with her frequently just to kind of touch base in terms of like, hey, like this is what we're working on. Is there any concerns you have? And then both Eddie and Haiti, being the former Latino caucus rep, and then Tomas Sanchez being the current one, I've had extensive relationship with them, not they're friends of mine, but also just working with them professionally, just making sure that they're in the conversations. Is this the right path forward? Is this the initiative that we work on? How can we be more inclusive as a whole in terms of the initiatives that we work on? Like, what are problems your communities are facing? But also remembering that they are one person, and one person can't represent an entire community. So it's being cognizant that there are multiple voices that are in that community, and making yourself available to the community as a whole and not just the one person, because I believe that's super detrimental. You shouldn't be focusing on one sole person. But yeah, I think Tony Shee was the ISC liaison this past year, and he's a freshman council member. I've gotten really close with him too. So I'm excited to see that community seat come in, and I'm super excited to see these different voices just to shape the initiatives that will really improve Penn State.
All right, so our next question is fairly long, so let me know if I cut out because my Wi-Fi hasn't been great today. Okay. Today, the Department of Education released a report that noted that Penn State was responsible for the failure to protect students from sexual misconduct and requires major overhaul of the Title IX procedures following compliance review. What role should student government play in prevention of sexual assault, and what ideas does your campaign have regarding it? So Lexy, you can start.
Yeah, so conveniently enough, we actually rolled out our platform today about addressing sexual assault issues on campus. And we also knew that that article came out, and we all were like, whoa, that's weird. We literally released our initiative for this on our website and on our social media. But essentially, one of the issues that we wanted to point out is that it's not being addressed, and that's what the article did too. And I think that's a primary concern to bring to administration. I think one of our ideas is actually to create a task force primarily focused on sexual assault, just because it is so prominent. And that article just proves how much we do need to be focusing on that problem. We highlight how the blue light system is actually super ineffective. Actually, statistic is that it was used 8 times and 7 times they were tests. So it's something that students don't use and they don't really go to. So to continue to lean on that it's not effective enough. So you need to be going forward. And also just having that communication with survivors. Obviously, it's not something that we want to do where it's like, oh, come talk to us, because it's not an easy conversation to have, but making ourselves accessible to those survivors who do want to open up about it. It's a serious issue on our campus. The fact that that article came out as we rolled this out was way ironic. It's just, we saw the article and we were just like, oh, this is convenient. This is exactly what we're addressing, because we see it being a big issue. We also want to highlight the aspect of the purple team and CAPS, just because that highlights sexual assault problems on campus as well. And I feel like it's not utilized as much. But most importantly, if me and Zach are elected, we want to be able to advocate to administration that this is a huge problem and there needs to be like a holistic report on it. I don't know if it was in 2014, I think it was a previous year that there was one done, but there needs to be an updated one, because if anything, it's just gotten worse. But yeah, it's not something that we can shove under the rug anymore. It's something that we need to address head on, and me and Zach are ready to do that.
Yeah, it's a real shame that came out, and it comes down to, we're going to work with administration to develop a really concrete plan to kind of make sure that these types of issues will not happen again. But then also, we need to let them know that, like, as representatives of the student body, we don't stand for this and we do not approve of the misconduct. And currently, I think it's only about like 23% of sexual assaults and abuse are reported. And so we want to make sure that every student feels that they can have confidentiality and commitment from Penn State when they do report. It's important that victims of sexual abuse and assault understand that they're able to share in whichever way that they want and proceed in whatever way that they are most comfortable. And I feel like that is what causes a lot of students not to report. And it's going to take, it's not just going to be regular reports and meetings that's going to fix this. It's going to take real leadership to work towards changing this culture. And one of the initiatives on our platform is to create a holistic wellness center. And kind of take all the psychological services and CAPS that Penn State offers and put them all in one place. But then, as well as that, put them with physical health centers and gyms and recreational centers. And as a campus rec employee, like, I can see that adding the psychological services and the CAPS services, as well as gyms and other physical wellness services, to one location will not only make access easier for students, but also it reduces the stigma for those that don't feel comfortable walking into a CAPS center. And we've talked to a lot of students, and some students have expressed to us that they do feel stigmatized or that they're looked at differently for walking into the CAPS center. But with all of it in one location, no one would know what you're walking into the building for. And so we feel strongly that that would be an initiative that would kind of help out with this issue.
So just a brief follow-up to each of you, 30 seconds to a minute. When we look at sexual misconduct, one of the big issues that comes up on Penn State is Greek life. In the last couple of years, when Penn State has released their Greek report cards, they've only mentioned none or one instance of sexual misconduct occurring at a fraternity or sorority. How you deal with, or what policies do you want to put in place to deal with fraternity or sorority Greek life sexual misconduct as a whole?
Can you say that statistic again? Sorry, I missed that.
So Penn State releases what they call their fraternity report cards based off of violations that fraternities might have occurred. And a couple of the recent ones, they mentioned that there were no fraternity reports of sexual misconduct, which we know as a community is just patently false.
Yeah.
So how would you deal with Greek life in the light of sexual misconduct?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, I think it comes down to making students feel comfortable to proceed and to report in whichever way they feel comfortable. And specifically, we have initiatives that will For example, we want to bring more lighting into Greek life areas so that students feel more comfortable walking to and from, fraternity houses and stuff like that. But it also comes down to empowering Greek life themselves, and giving them the opportunity to fix their issues. And so we want to empower them, but also, we want them to be held accountable for their actions. And it really comes down to making students feel comfortable reporting and proceeding in whichever way possible. And we feel that way, that'll kind of fix the issue of less reporting, and then kind of bring it to more light, and then we can deal with the issue there.
Yeah, I think it's super important also to streamline reporting resources, just because I feel like it may be hard to find them in the first place. So not only like comfortability, but I think streamlining those resources in the first place is super important. And also just working with administration in terms of doing that, just so that it's more broader and on a broader scale. We also have advocating for increased lighting, especially on Greek Row. One of our ideas is just to make sure that people feel comfortable. Obviously, if you've been on Greek Row, it's not the most lighted area, but that also goes for like west side of campus as well. And that's something that even if it's just lighting, it's working with the State College Borough. Actually, Dan Murphy, one of the members, he actually expressed interest in this, which was super awesome to hear. So working with local government, especially State College Borough, is super important for this. And it's also just streamlining those resources, and also just addressing the problem within UPUA. Another idea that we had was advocating for a position in UPUA that exactly addresses this problem with sexual assault, just because how prominent of an issue it is. And we just saw it with that article coming out from the Civil Rights Office. But yeah, I think it's super important that we advocate for this and just in general. And I think if anything, we have a lot of commonality in how we're going to do that.
Let's see, you have your hand up. Are you trying to ask a question right now?
Yeah, so one of the, there's a question for Kyle. So one of the concerns about the Holistic Wellness Center that I've heard is that incorporating like a campus rec facility within it, obviously something that students go to CAPS for are eating disorders, and having that kind of affiliation actually may increase the stigma for them. Is that something you guys have considered? Is that anything that's been brought up to you? And if so, how do you plan to combat that?
Yeah, so like our main goal is reducing the stigma for people that feel there is a stigma there. There still will be resources for people with eating disorders. Just because we create a holistic wellness center doesn't mean that, a specified branch within CAPS could say, hey, the eating disorder branch should not be in the IM building or, around everything else. And that's kind of where we lean on them. They're the experts in it. I'm not an expert in CAPS or counseling. I've taken some courses throughout my veteran mentor training, but that's when we lean on them to kind of collaborate with them and have them tell us the issues as we go.
So for this next question, let's start with Kyle. And this question might be a little humorous. Can you guys each speak to a mistake, no matter how serious or how funny, that you've made during your time at Penn State, and how you rectified that mistake, how you fixed it, or how you learned from it and moved on?
Oh, yeah. How many mistakes are we talking about? I would say my biggest mistake was my freshman year, the first class I ever took. I got out of the military and I didn't know how to learn. I didn't know how to teach myself things, and I didn't know how to sit in a lecture hall and take a class. And so I just completely gaffed off my math class, and I ended up getting a D in that class. It was the only D I've ever gotten, and it's brought down my GPA since. And I realized after that I need to take ownership of that situation. And it's easy for me to say, oh, my professor, it was his fault, or I'm not a good test taker, or math is just so hard, or I'm a veteran and I haven't been in school for 5 years. But that's not the right way to do things. And so I realized that I needed to take ownership and figure out what I needed to do to fix that issue. And so I started taking tutoring. For all my other classes, I changed up my scheduling so that I knew what I was getting into and I didn't overload myself with credits. And I just started building my GPA back up. And, I'm a big believer in taking ownership. Great book on it by Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. Little plug there, but it's a great book, and I'm huge in taking ownership and realizing that was my mistake. And so I needed to fix that myself and not blame anyone else or my status or the fact that I had a different professor or anything like that, and just realize that I needed to take steps and develop a plan to be able to fix this issue.
It's actually really funny. I have a similar mistake. My freshman year, I'm a first-generation American, so my parents didn't really go through the school system here. So when it came to college especially, I didn't really know how to navigate it the best. So it was more of just like a trial and run test, really. So when it came to classes, my first math class, I was placed into Math 110. And I asked, like, oh, can I take a lower math class just because it's not my strong suit? I will be honest there. And my NSO advisor was like, oh, like you were placed into it, I encourage you to take it. I ended up, unfortunately, failing the class. I'll be super honest about that. I'm definitely not perfect, far from it. And my GPA, wow, suffered. And I'm still like pushing that GPA to get back up there. And I totally relate, actually. And it definitely came with taking ownership of it. Obviously, I didn't have the best tools and I didn't have all the tools there to navigate that. But it's always about learning from your mistakes, and that's definitely something that I did. It's kind of going forward, seeing kind of taking that syllabus weeks, really looking into the course, because I have to admit, when I took that math class, I was like, oh, I could do it, but I definitely overestimated myself there. But I think it's about learning from your mistakes, especially, and just reaching out to all the resources that you had. Like, my advisor is there, and although she did tell me to continue to take it, I should have pressed to ask more questions. And I think, again, that comes from just the mistakes you make in life. It makes you a better person. It makes you a strong leader. Do I regret it? Yeah, I still do. But at the end of the day, I'm working back up to get my GPA back up there. And I've definitely been taking ownership of it. So I agree with that.
All right, so one of a question submitted to our Google form was, what, if any, is the significance of your campaign colors? So Lexy, you can start.
Yeah, it was really funny. We released on St. Patrick's Day, like our official campaign, and everyone was probably like, did they model it after St. Patrick's Day? No, we did not. So with Zach's heritage, he's Irish, and with my heritage, I'm Indian. I'm first generation. Zach has just ancestors and his uncles and aunts. That's the heritage that they celebrate. So the colors of each of the flags are white, green, and orange. And something that we really wanted to do with our campaign was to highlight our roots and highlight who we are. Because we're bringing you our true and honest selves. And I'm super passionate and I'm super proud to be Indian. Although I did grow up in a very white majority neighborhood, it seems like some people like to think that my culture is not there, but it definitely is, especially with my home, with my parents, with my family. I'm so proud. And I think that's something that we wanted to instill, is that we're proud of our tradition, we're proud of our roots, and we wanted to instill something about ourselves into our campaign somehow, so it made that much more it that much more personable to people. And I'm super happy that we did. Although it was ironic, the release of all of our campaigning material was on the 17th of March. I still think it was great. I think it's something that I'm definitely not regretting. I think I'm super proud of that decision for us.
I really like blue, and Aaron really likes gold. No, so we don't have a lot of like huge symbolization between our colors, but one of the things that we did think really hardly about was what we wanted our logo to look like. And so we chose Allen Street Gates as kind of our logo for our campaign and our platform specifically. The reason we did that is one of our big pillars within our platform is opening the gates for success. And so Allen Street Gates, class gift in 1916, fun fact, also my favorite class gift. but it symbolizes the transition from college life into the real world. You know, everyone always stands by the Allen Street gates as you're leaving campus and going onto Allen Street, downtown or whatever. And so we felt that did a good job of symbolizing the transition from college to real world, but then also within our pillar, opening the gates for success. We really feel that it's important that we need to facilitate the success, not only from high school to college, but also college to real life. And so everyone here, you know, they transition from high school to college eventually. For me, it took 4 years until I did that, but we wanted to facilitate that transition. And so that's one of our strongest pillars, and that's why we chose the Allen Street gates.
Okay, so we have one final question for both of you, and we're going to start with Kyle. And I want to be clear that this is probably going to be, for a lot of people, the most important question that's asked tonight, and you should be careful because it might alienate a lot of potential voters.
Okay.
Sheets or Wawa?
Oh, Wawa, come on, I'm from Delaware. I'm not even gonna disregard everyone that says Sheets. I'm a Wawa person.
I'm dead. I'm definitely Wawa. I'm Bucks County. I'm Philly. Like I will never betray Wawa. Actually, I do have the points card for Sheets, but that's because I get gas from there when I'm in state college. So I will admit that. But other than that, Wawa's definitely needed.
Thank you both for all of your answers. But so we're going to end with 5 minutes for a conclusion statement. This can be about any answers today, your platforms, what you want students to know. It's your time to say whatever you want. So because Kyle went first during the introductions, we're going to have Lexy go first during the conclusions. So Lexy, you have the floor.
Okay. First of all, thank you guys again for being here. I know this isn't super the situation that we all wanted to be in. But I appreciate you taking the time and facilitating it, but also for everyone who will watch or might watch, thank you guys for listening to our ideas and who we are as people. I wish we could see each other in person, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate your commitment to keeping our community safe. Zach and I are so honored to run in this election for you and for our shared future. And to have spoken with hundreds of students that we already have about the goals and hopes that we hope to see bring about on our campaign, and also further than that when we're elected. My experience in UPUA leaves no room for doubt that I am the most qualified and prepared individual on campus to take on the role of student body vice president for UPUA. Our campaign is and always have been geared towards you and your greatest needs. Through these incredibly difficult times of the coronavirus pandemic, it can sometimes feel like nobody is in your corner. I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that Zach and I will always be in your corner. Not only to listen to your ideas for Penn State, but to make sure that Penn State is actively advocating for what students really want, and in many cases, what they desperately need. We're keeping your top concerns our top priority during the time of crisis. I can't speak for anybody but myself and Zach, but my first priority of serving you, the students, will never change. Please reach out if you need anything. I'm pretty fairly available. Social media, if you want my phone number, I'm not shy, but I'm always here for you. And I think that's the most important thing, especially in this time. Thanks.
Yeah, so I also want to take some time to thank Alexa and Jacob for moderating this debate, as well as all who are going to be watching this in the future once it's released. I really hope that this helps to get you guys to know me more, as well as the platform that Aaron and I stand behind. And the UPUA 15th Assembly is going to need strong leadership. It's going to need a tough work ethic, and it's going to need unity to be able to tackle the issues we talked about today. With my experience as an infantry squad leader, I learned what it takes to lead. I've had the privilege to lead some of the most incredible groups of people and to work with the most incredible groups of people I've ever met through the harshest times we've ever endured. It's these hard times and strong leadership that really brings people together. So regardless of the circumstances we are in today, I also wanted to say that these harsh times are going to bring us all together, and that's what we need right now. And that's why I believe Aaron and I are the right people for the job. I have years of real life experience, both in the military and out, facilitating teamwork, creativity, and collaboration to achieve tremendous goals. What I don't have in specific UPUA experience, Aaron makes up for it tenfold. I couldn't do this without her, and luckily I don't have to. And as a team, I really think that we complement each other's strengths and fill in the gaps to make a solid unit. After working with her during this campaign, I have no doubt that we'll be able to achieve the highest level and focus on bettering the undergraduate student body. I encourage everyone to take a look at our platform. There are 72 initiatives on there, and I can promise you that every stater, no matter your background or ideals or culture, will find initiatives that directly help better your college experience. Penn State's a very tight-knit community. We're centered around we are. If elected, Aaron and I will work tirelessly together to keep this culture alive and empower State's future. Thank you.
On behalf of Alexa and myself, we want to thank both Kyle and Lexy, both candidates, for taking their time out of their busy schedules to come and answer some questions from the Penn State voters. We also want to thank all of you guys who are watching this in the future, whether that's 10 minutes from now or a couple days from now, because being a voter and being an informed voter, even though it only seems like a student government election, is extremely important. We also want to remind people that 2 weeks from today, on April 9th, we will be holding our presidential election with Aaron and Zach. And the week following, on that Wednesday, April 15th, we will be holding the actual election itself. So again, thank you to everyone watching. Thank you to Kyle and Lexy, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.